My name is Elena Carter. I was 34 years old, working as an office manager at a private dermatology clinic in Phoenix, when I found out my husband had been sleeping with my best friend for almost a year. I didn't catch them in bed, I didn't find lipstick on his collar or read some drunk text at 2 in the morning. I found out because my best friend accidentally sent me a photo of my own husband asleep in a hotel bed, shirtless, one arm thrown across a white pillow, with the caption, "He has no idea what I'm planning for him tonight." For a second, I honestly thought I was looking at something my brain had stitched together wrong, some glitch, some angle that only looked like him. But then I saw the scar near his shoulder, the one from a dirt bike accident he'd had at 19, and my whole body went cold. The message disappeared almost immediately, unsent, too late. I was standing in the supply closet at work with a box of nitrile gloves balanced on my hip, staring at my phone like it had exploded in my hand. The fluorescent light above me buzzed softly. Somewhere down the hall, one of the nurses laughed. A patient at the front desk was asking whether we validated parking. Everything around me stayed painfully normal while my life split open so quietly no one else could hear it. I didn't cry. Not then. I zoomed in on the photo. Hotel lamp, gray headboard, a sliver of a woman's bare knee at the edge of the mattress, and on the nightstand, half visible, was Baniel's watch, the silver one I'd bought him for our 10th anniversary, the one he'd kissed my forehead over and said he'd wear forever. I locked the supply closet door and sat down on an unopened case of paper towels because my legs suddenly didn't feel dependable. My husband was supposed to be in Flagstaff for a regional sales conference. My best friend, Ava, had told me she was in Sedona for a girls' wellness weekend with 2 women from her Pilates studio. And somehow, both of them were in the same hotel room while I was at work ordering syringes and toner cartridges like an idiot. I wish I could tell you I handled it with immediate dignity, that I breathed through the shock, gathered evidence, called a lawyer, and moved like a woman in a thriller. But the truth is, I sat in that closet for 12 minutes refreshing a text thread that no longer showed the photo, trying to convince myself there had to be an explanation so absurdly perfect it could rewind what I already knew. There wasn't. Daniel and I had been married for 11 years. We lived in a beige stucco house in Ahwatukee with a lemon tree in the backyard and a crack in the kitchen tile I kept meaning to fix. We didn't have children, not because we hadn't wanted them, but because wanting and getting are not the same thing. After 3 miscarriages in 4 years, I stopped buying baby clothes on sale, and Daniel stopped talking about names. Grief settled into the corners of our marriage in a way neither of us knew how to clean up. We still functioned, we paid bills, we hosted Thanksgiving, we remembered birthdays. But somewhere along the way, our conversations turned practical, then sparse, then careful. Still, I thought careful meant salvageable. I thought quiet meant mature. I did not think it meant he was taking weekend trips with my best friend. Ava had been in my life since I was 19. We met at community college when she borrowed my pen, forgot to return it, then bought me coffee to make up for it. She was the kind of woman people noticed immediately. Glossy dark hair, easy laughter, perfect posture, the kind of confidence that looked effortless from a distance and exhausting up close. Men loved her. Women wanted to be chosen by her. I had always assumed our friendship worked because I never competed. Ava liked to shine. I liked to observe. She said I made her feel safe. I told her she made life less boring. It felt balanced. She was beside me through the miscarriages, or at least I thought she was. She brought flowers once, soup twice, and one night after the second loss, she sat cross-legged on my living room rug and cried harder than I did. Looking back, that memory is the one that makes me feel the stupidest, because I see now what I missed. The way Daniel hovered in the doorway while she comforted me, the way she answered questions for him before he had to speak, the way grief opened our front door and I was too broken to notice who walked through it. At 5:17 that evening, Daniel texted me from Flagstaff. Long day, dinner with the team, probably crash early, love you. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I typed back, love you too, hope the conference is going well. That was the moment something in me changed. Not because I stopped loving him, that would have been cleaner. It changed because I realized he was comfortable lying to me while believing I would keep being exactly who I had always been, reasonable, loyal, slow to anger, the woman who explained things away, the woman who could be counted on to preserve everyone else's comfort. He thought I would confront, cry, beg, maybe leave. He did not think I would learn. By the time I got home, the house looked offensive in its familiarity. Daniel's running shoes by the mudroom bench, his coffee mug in the sink, the throw blanket I hated folded neatly over the couch arm because I was the one who folded it. I stood in the kitchen for a long time with my purse still on my shoulder, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and tried to decide what kind of wife I was going to be next. Then I did something I had never done before. I opened our phone bill. Daniel handled most of the account stuff because he worked in medical sales and liked points, upgrades, plans, all the little tech details that bored me. I had access, of course, I just never felt the need to look. That night, I looked, and there she was, Ava's number, again and again and again. Calls late at night when he claimed he was in the garage on work calls with the East Coast team, bursts of texts on weekends she happened to drop by with muffins or ask if we wanted to meet for brunch. Months of contact. Not random, not flirtation, a pattern, dense, shameless, sustained. I pulled up our shared credit card next. There were charges I recognized. Gas, groceries, the pet store where we bought food for the cat Daniel claimed he never wanted, and there were charges I didn't. Boutique hotel in Scottsdale 3 months earlier, steakhouse downtown on a Thursday night Daniel told me he was entertaining clients, spa charges in Sedona billed to Ava's business card, then partially reimbursed from our joint account to Daniel for conference incidentals. I sat at the dining table till midnight building a timeline with a mechanical pencil and the back of an old insurance envelope. You learn a lot about betrayal when you stop looking at it emotionally and start looking at it administratively. It is organized. It has receipts. At 12:43 a.m., Ava texted me. Sorry, babe, just saw your Instagram story. Your hydrangeas are dead again, LOL. Need me to come rescue your yard this weekend? I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because cruelty gets surreal when it gets lazy. I wrote back, maybe next weekend. Daniel is out of town and I'm exhausted. She reacted with a heart. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 18 months. Then I drove to a strip plaza in Chandler and met with a family law attorney named Miriam Feld, who wore navy suits and low heels and looked like she hadn't wasted a minute on nonsense since 1998. Her office smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and printer toner. I liked her immediately. I told her I thought my husband was cheating. Then I corrected myself. No, I know he is. She listened without interrupting while I laid out the photo, the bills, the hotel charges, the phone records. Every now and then she made a note in a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she folded her hands and asked, "What do you want?" The question should have been simple. It wasn't. I wanted the last 11 years to not be humiliating. I wanted the version of Ava who sat on my floor and cried with me to have been real. I wanted to stop feeling like the dumbest woman in Arizona. Instead, I said, I want to make sure he can't lie his way out of this. Miriam nodded once. Then, don't confront yet. Gather, quietly. Copy everything. Financials, devices if you can access them legally, travel, messages. And, Elena.
Yes? If there is more than infidelity here, Let it come to light before you tip your hand. I didn't understand what she meant until 2 days later. Daniel came home from Flagstaff with a branded tote bag, a lanyard, and a tired smile he put on like a jacket. He kissed my cheek in the kitchen while I was slicing strawberries and asked about my week. I asked about his conference. He gave me a smooth, practiced answer about networking, disappointing coffee, and a keynote speaker who ran long. Then he handed me a small box. "For you," he said. Inside was a pair of gold earrings from a boutique in Sedona. Not Flagstaff, Sedona. I looked up slowly. "These are beautiful." He smiled, relieved. "Saw them and thought of you." That night, while he showered, I took a photo of the receipt tucked into the bottom of the bag. Ava had excellent taste. So did I. Apparently, only one of us had boundaries. Over the next week, I became a woman I did not recognize, and strangely respected. I copied bank statements, forwarded insurance documents, downloaded tax returns. I checked cloud storage, mileage logs, synced photo backups. Daniel had always believed I was uninterested in the details. That was his mistake. Uninterested is not the same as incapable. And then I found something that had nothing to do with Ava, a transfer. Then another, then 6 more, small enough at first not to draw attention. 2,000 here, 3,500 there, money moving from our joint savings into an LLC I didn't recognize, DRS Consulting Group. When I searched the state registry, my throat tightened. Daniel R. Sutton, listed manager. The mailing address was a UPS store box. I kept reading. And that was when I understood the affair wasn't the only betrayal. It was camouflage. A week later, sitting in my parked car outside that same UPS store with a folder on the passenger seat and my pulse beating at the base of my throat, I realized my husband hadn't just been sleeping with my best friend. He had been preparing to leave me broke. I didn't go inside the UPS store that day. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I wanted to march up to the counter, demand answers, rip open whatever polite little box number my husband had built his secret life around, and drag every ugly detail into the sunlight. But Miriam's voice stayed with me. Don't confront yet. Gather, quietly. So I sat in my car with the air conditioning running too high and watched people come and go. A man in scrubs carrying Amazon returns, a woman with a toddler balanced on one hip and a roll of packing tape in the other hand, an older couple mailing what looked like Christmas presents even though it was only October. Normal people doing normal things, while I stared at a mailbox address connected to my marriage like it might blink and confess. When I got home, Daniel was on the couch, half watching a game, one ankle crossed over his knee, our cat curled beside him like loyalty was still a simple thing. He looked up and smiled. "How was dinner with Ava?" "Long day," I said. He kissed the top of my head. "You need a vacation." The audacity of that nearly made me laugh. Over the next few days, I dug deeper into DRS Consulting Group. There was no website, no legitimate client footprint, no professional licensing trail, just a hollow little shell with money flowing into it from our savings account and, in 2 cases, from one of Daniel's corporate reimbursement deposits before the funds vanished again in cash withdrawals and vendor payments. I tracked what I could: flights, hotel bookings, dinners, jewelry, a furniture store in Scottsdale. More than once, the timing overlapped with Ava's social posts: cropped cocktails, spa robes, anonymous resort balconies, captions about choosing joy and protecting your peace. Her piece, apparently, had my debit card attached to it. I printed everything at work during lunch, feeding page after page through the copier, while the receptionist ate yogurt at the front desk and a pharmaceutical rep flirted too loudly in the waiting room. I kept each packet in a plain manila folder inside an old canvas tote from a teacher appreciation event. There was something almost insulting about how ordinary the logistics of devastation were. The affair was one thing, terrible, obvious, intimate in the worst way, but the money made it strategic. This wasn't just two selfish people falling into bed and lying about it after. This was planning. This was theft with candles and hotel robes. This was my husband using our life together to finance my replacement while making sure I'd be left with confusion and less cash than I should have had when he finally walked away. On Friday evening, Ava invited me to dinner. "Just the two of us," she texted. "I miss my girl. Wine and gossip?" I stared at the screen so long the brightness dimmed. Then I typed back, "I'd love that." We met at a small Italian place in Arcadia, where the lighting was low and flattering, and every table had a candle in a little amber glass holder. Ava arrived 12 minutes late in cream blazer and gold hoops, apologizing in that breezy tone people use when they assume charm is currency. She leaned in to hug me, and for a disorienting second I smelled Daniel's cologne on her. Not exactly, not enough to prove anything, but enough to make the inside of my mouth go dry. "You look tired," she said, unfolding her napkin. "Work?" "Life," I said. She gave me that sympathetic tilt of the head she had perfected years ago. "Tell me everything." It is a strange thing to sit across from someone you once trusted completely and realize they are performing care from muscle memory. Her face moved in all the right places, concern in the eyebrows, softness around the mouth, the occasional reach across the table towards my wrist, and under it, nothing I could stand on. So I performed too. I told her work had been stressful, that Daniel and I had been a little distant, that I felt restless, maybe even foolish for how small my life had become. I watched her closely as I spoke, looking for a flicker, a tell, anything. It came when I mentioned divorce, but only as a hypothetical. Not my plan, not yet, just a passing sentence. Some people wake up one day and realize they've built a life that doesn't fit anymore. Ava froze for a half breath before recovering. It was tiny, but I saw it. Then she sipped her wine and said almost too carefully, "Well, sometimes endings are just overdue honesty." I looked at her. "That's an interesting way to put it." She smiled, but it landed wrong. "You know what I mean. People stay in things because they're scared to disappoint others." There it was. Not confession, not guilt. Permission. She wasn't worried about hurting me. She was already rewriting me into the obstacle. By the time the entrees came, I knew two things. First, she believed whatever this was with Daniel would survive exposure. Second, I thought I was still behind. I let her believe it. When I got home, Daniel was on the couch, half watching a game, one ankle crossed over his knee, our cat curled beside him like loyalty was still a simple thing. He looked up and smiled. "How was dinner with Ava?"
Good, I said, setting my purse down. She thinks people stay in bad marriages because they're scared. His expression didn't change much, but not changing can be a change if you know someone well enough. He muted the television. "Do you?" "Sometimes," I said. We held each other's gaze for a second too long. Then he nodded and turned the game back on. That night, I waited until he was asleep, then used his thumb against the edge of the mattress to unlock his phone. If you've never done something like that, it sounds dramatic. It wasn't. It was silent and ugly and practical. The room smelled faintly of his body wash. The ceiling fan clicked every few seconds. I kept expecting him to wake up and catch me hovering there in the blue light like a version of myself I didn't know how to defend. His messages with Ava were buried under a fake contact name, Mason, IT. Creative. The thread went back 8 months. I won't pretend I read every word that night. I couldn't. Not at first. The first screenful was enough to make my stomach fold in on itself. Hotel confirmations, jokes about me, complaints about my grief, casual cruelty dressed up as intimacy. She is so checked out lately. I know. She notices nothing. Once this is done, we can finally breathe. There were photos, too. Selfies in mirrors I'd never seen. Her bare legs across his lap, his hand on her waist, one of them toasting champagne in a suite I had indirectly paid for through my own joint account. I sent screenshots to a new encrypted email Miriam had told me to create. Methodical, quiet. I kept going. Then I found the message that changed everything. Not because it proved the affair. That part was already rotten and obvious. Because it proved intent.
Daniel had written, "I'm moving the rest after bonus clears. She still hasn't noticed the consulting account. Once I file in January, I can position it like we've been financially separated for months." Ava replied with a laughing emoji, then, "Make sure she doesn't get suspicious before the cabin weekend. I am not losing this house because you get sloppy." This house, not a dream, not a future, a transaction already underway. The cabin turned out to be in Payson, a rental booked for 3 nights in December under the LLC. I found the confirmation in his email trash, then the deposit on the shared card disguised as office entertainment. I kept scrolling. There were discussions about selling our house. Not together, not after a conversation, after a filing, fast, before she gets emotional and drags things out. At 2:14 a.m., I sat on the bathroom floor with Daniel's phone in my hand and pressed my fist to my mouth so I wouldn't make a sound. It wasn't the sex that broke something final in me. It was reading how easily they reduced me. Not wife, not friend, not a human being with history and a nervous system and memories and losses. Just an inconvenience to manage cleanly. The next morning, Daniel made cinnamon coffee and asked if I wanted eggs. I said yes. I watched him cook in the kitchen we'd painted together 6 summers earlier while acting out a domestic life he had already priced and partitioned in private. He plated my breakfast, kissed my temple, and told me he might need to go to Denver in December for a year-end client retreat. Payson, I thought. Cabin weekend. House. I smiled and asked whether he wanted sourdough toast, too. By Monday, Miriam had enough to stop sounding cautious. She sounded angry. We met in her office again. I handed over the screenshots, the bank transfers, the LLC records, the travel confirmations. She read in silence, turning pages with increasing precision, the way some people get quieter when they're trying not to say exactly what they think. Finally, she set the packet down. "This is very good for you," she said. The wording was so legal I almost laughed. That bad? For him? Yes. She tapped one acrylic nail against the messages. Adultery doesn't always move the needle much in practice. Financial concealment does. Dissipation of marital assets does. Fraudulent pre-positioning does. I leaned back. So he was planning this? Yes, she said flatly, and he was counting on you being too shocked to respond well. I don't know what expression crossed my face, but hers softened a little. "Elena," she said, "you need to think carefully about your endgame." I stared at the lemon water on her desk. "I want them both to feel it." She nodded, not approving or disapproving, just recording the fact. "Then make sure whatever you do helps you, not just hurts them." That should have been the sentence I built my revenge around. Instead, what I built first was patience. For the next 3 weeks, I became the most agreeable version of myself Daniel had seen in years. I laughed when expected. I agreed to Thanksgiving plans. I helped him choose a tie for a work dinner. I even texted Ava first one afternoon with a photo of boots and the question, "Which pair says emotionally stable but still fun?" She responded within seconds. "Black, obviously. Also, you are fun. You just forget sometimes." I nearly threw my phone across the room, but I didn't, because by then I had a new rule: never interrupt your enemies while they are misjudging you. I met with a forensic accountant Miriam recommended. I opened a new bank account in my name only, redirected my paycheck, changed the beneficiary on my life insurance, pulled copies of the deed, retirement accounts, and equity line statements. The accountant found more than I had. There was a storage unit too, paid through the LLC. New furniture, appliances, security deposit for a leased townhouse in North Scottsdale starting January 15th. My husband wasn't just cheating with my best friend, he had furnished their beginning with my money. The confrontation could have happened then, a dozen times actually, when he lied without blinking, when Ava sent me a voice note laughing about some influencer breakup and called cheaters pathetic, when Daniel asked whether I wanted to invite Ava to our Christmas dinner because she shouldn't be alone. But I kept waiting, because there is a difference between catching someone and collapsing their lie completely they can't rebuild it fast enough to save face. That moment came in early December when Daniel's company hosted its annual holiday gala at a downtown Phoenix hotel. Spouses were invited. Ava was coming too, because her marketing firm did contract work for one of the event sponsors. Of course she was. The universe, when it gets dark enough, starts arranging theater. I decided that would be the night.
Not because public humiliation is always noble, it isn't, but because both of them lived off appearances. They had built this whole betrayal inside polished surfaces. Work trips, networking dinners, self-care weekends, curated grief, carefully angled photos and plausible excuses, and just enough sophistication to make ugliness look aspirational. So I chose the room they would least expect me to stop being polite in. The week before the gala, I got one more gift. Ava called me while driving, voice too bright. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Sure. If you ever left Daniel," she said, laughing lightly as if this were a joke she had every right to make, "would you keep the house or sell it?" For a second, I said nothing. Traffic hummed through her speaker. A turn signal clicked. Somewhere in the background, I could hear the faint sound of a pop song I knew Daniel liked. Then I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Why?" "No, Misen. Mia from Pilates is splitting with her husband and they're fighting over everything. It sounds miserable." "I'd keep what's mine," I said. She went quiet for half a beat. "Yeah," she said, "fair." When the call ended, I sat very still. She wasn't fishing emotionally, she was checking logistics. By then, I had already frozen more than she knew. Miriam filed a motion quietly. My half of certain liquid assets was protected. The accountant's report was ready. The screenshots were backed up in 3 places. And through a connection of Miriam's, we had learned one more delicious detail. Daniel's company was in the middle of internal compliance review over expense abuse in his region. He wasn't just stealing from me. He might also have been padding reimbursements around these trips. He had built himself a house of dry leaves. All I needed to do was strike the match in the right room. The night of the gala, I wore a dark green dress Daniel had never seen before. It was simple, elegant, and expensive enough to make him notice. I had my hair blown out, my makeup done softer than usual, and a calmness inside me so complete it almost felt holy. When I came downstairs, Daniel looked up from knotting his tie and actually smiled, like he was proud to be seen with me. "Wow," he said, "you look incredible." "I know," I said. He laughed, slightly thrown off. "Good, you should." The ballroom was all gold light and clinking glasses. Banners, winter centerpieces, women in satin and men talking too loudly about market forecasts, a jazz trio near the stage, waiters moving through the crowd with champagne flutes balanced on black trays. And there was Ava. Silver dress, bare shoulders, red lipstick. Her hand resting for just a second too long on Daniel's forearm when she said hello to both of us. "Elena," she said warmly, kissing the air beside my cheek, "you look amazing." "So do you," I said. I meant it. She looked like the kind of woman who had never once believed consequences could catch up in heels. For the first hour, I played my part beautifully. I smiled at Daniel's coworkers, complimented someone's earrings, asked about a new skincare device one of the sales reps was pushing. I even let Ava pull me into a photo near the sponsor wall, her body pressed lightly to mine, both of us smiling like friendship still had bones. Then dinner was called. Seats were assigned. Daniel at our table with 2 executives and me, Ava 3 tables over near the sponsor cluster. I'd hoped for that. Distance sharpens impact. There's a particular silence in a ballroom right before speeches begin. Silverware settles, chairs stop moving, conversations taper, people turn toward the stage while still half inside themselves. That was when I stood up. At first, Daniel thought I was heading to the restroom. He looked up, distracted, one hand around his water glass. Then I picked up the wireless microphone the MC had left on the side podium after introducing the regional VP, and the whole room changed. I didn't rush. That's the part I'm proudest of. I walked to the center of the room like I belonged there, like I had every right to interrupt a carefully planned evening full of polished conversations and safe applause. A few people turned, confused. Someone near the front frowned slightly. The band paused mid-transition, sensing something off. I tapped the microphone once. The soft thud echoed just enough. "Hi," I said, my voice steady, almost conversational. "I'm sorry to interrupt. This won't take long." Now the room was listening. Daniel had half risen from his chair.
I could feel it without looking, that instinct he had to control situations, to smooth things over before they got messy. But this wasn't a spill he could wipe up with a napkin and a smile. "My name is Elena Carter," I continued. "I'm married to Daniel Sutton, one of your regional sales managers." A ripple went through the tables. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to signal that people were shifting from polite attention to real curiosity. "I also happen to be close friends with Ava Reynolds," I added, letting her name land separately. I turned my head just slightly. She was already staring at me. Perfect posture, but her eyes had sharpened. Not fear yet, just calculation, trying to understand the angle, trying to decide whether to laugh this off, stand up, or stay very still. "I wanted to thank both of them," I said. Now there were murmurs, because gratitude doesn't belong in tension. It confuses people. I continued. "They've taught me a lot this year. About trust, about patience, about how easy it is to build a life on appearances while quietly taking from someone who believes in you." Daniel was standing now. "Elena," he said under his breath, but the microphone picked it up just enough to carry. I didn't look at him. "I found out a few weeks ago that my husband has been in a relationship with my best friend for months." No one laughed. No one moved. The silence tightened. I let it sit there for a second. Then I kept going. "That part is painful," I said calmly, "but it's not the most interesting part." Now Daniel stepped closer. "We can talk about this at home." I turned toward him then, finally, just enough for the room to see both of us in the same frame. "We will," I said, "but they should hear this too." I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small stack of printed pages. Not all of it, just enough. "Over the past year, Daniel has been moving money from our joint accounts into a private LLC,
funding trips, gifts, and a separate residence, while also preparing to file for divorce in a way that would leave me with less than what I'm legally entitled to." Now the room shifted. Not just curiosity anymore. Recognition. People in that room understood numbers. Liability. Risk. Exposure. "I have copies of everything," I added quietly. "Transactions, messages, travel records, including communications that suggest some of these expenses may have been misrepresented through company reimbursements." That was when I heard it. A chair scrape. Not from Daniel, from someone at the executive table. I didn't need to look to know that sentence had landed exactly where it needed to. Daniel's voice dropped, sharper now. "Stop." I looked at him fully for the first time. "No," I said. Then I turned just slightly and found Ava again. She hadn't moved, but her face had changed. The confidence was gone. Not replaced with panic yet. Something colder, like she was trying to calculate how to survive this in real time. "I think the most surprising thing," I said, my voice softer now, almost reflective, "is how normal everything felt while it was happening. Dinners, texts, advice, smiles. It all looked so real." I paused. "But so do lies when you practice them long enough." No one spoke. I placed the papers back into my clutch. "I won't take any more of your evening," I said. "I just thought it was important that the truth showed up to the same room the story's been living in." Then I handed the microphone back to the stunned MC, stepped off the small stage area, and walked past Daniel without stopping. He didn't follow me immediately. That told me everything. By the time I reached the lobby, my hands had started shaking. Not from fear, from release. I pushed through the glass doors into the cool night air and stood there for a second, breathing in something that felt cleaner than anything I'd had in months. My phone buzzed almost instantly. Daniel. I didn't answer. Then Ava. I ignored that too. Then Miriam. That one I picked up. "Are you somewhere safe?" she asked, her tone already sharp with awareness. "Yes." A pause. "Did you just do what I think you did?" "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay," she said finally. "Then we move fast now." The fallout didn't come slowly. It came all at once. By morning, Daniel had called 12 times, left 4 voicemails. The first 2 angry, the third defensive, the fourth quieter, controlled, trying to pivot. I didn't respond.
Instead, I met Miriam at her office at 8 a.m. and signed the formal filing. By noon, Daniel's company had placed him on administrative leave pending review. By evening, Ava's social media had gone private. By the next day, Daniel was no longer staying at our house. I don't know where he went. I didn't ask. What I did know was this: the version of my life that had existed before that night was gone, and strangely, that didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. There were moments, of course, quiet ones, standing in the kitchen alone, folding laundry that only belonged to me, not hearing his keys in the door at the end of the day, missing something I couldn't quite name, not him exactly, but the idea of who I thought he was. And Ava, that one took longer to untangle, because losing a husband is one kind of grief. Losing the person who knew your entire history and still chose to betray you inside it, that's something else. She sent one message 3 days later. I never meant it to happen like this. I read it once, then deleted it, because the truth is, it didn't matter how she meant it to happen. It mattered that she did. The legal process moved forward with a precision that almost felt surgical. Accounts were frozen, documentation reviewed, the LLC traced, the townhouse lease uncovered. The pattern was clear. Not just infidelity, but intent. Daniel tried briefly to negotiate, not with remorse, with strategy. I don't want this to get uglier than it has to, he said during one of the mediated calls. I almost smiled. It already is, I replied. In the end, there was no dramatic courtroom speech, no last-minute confession that fixed anything. Just paperwork, consequences, division. He lost more than he expected, not because I took it, because he tried to hide it. Ava disappeared from my world completely. No more brunches, no more late-night calls, no more shared jokes or borrowed clothes, or the illusion of loyalty, just absence and clarity. A few months later, I stood in a small, quiet townhouse I had chosen myself. Not as big as our old house, not as polished, but honest. Every piece of furniture in it was there because I put it there. Every bill attached to my name was one I understood. Every corner held a version of me that hadn't been edited to make someone else comfortable. One evening, I was watering a plant by the window when I realized something simple. I wasn't angry anymore, not because they deserved it, but because I didn't need it. What I had thought would be revenge turned out to be something else. Exposure, and then release. They lost what they built. I kept what I am, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.